I thought the GP-180 might actually sound better than the GP-200, but after testing them side by side, something just didn't make sense. So I just kept digging. Same amps, same IRs, same performance, even spectrum analysis. And what I found was not what I expected. So let's go step by step. Here's what I'm gonna do. First, I'll just test both units using their internal lamps and caps. Then I'll just remove the cap from the units and use the same IR in the DAW. Then I'll load the same external IR into both units. And finally, I'll test an amp against the neural amp modeler as a reference, because I just want to understand where the difference is actually coming from. To make this fair, I recorded the DI signal first and then reamped that same performance through both units, so everything just stays consistent, the playing is identical, no variation between takes, and both units go into the DAW and I can control exactly what I'm hearing. So one important detail, the GP-180 is about 20 dBs louder than the GP-200, so I just matched the loudness between both signals because louder almost always sound better, and I didn't want that to influence the results. Let's start with the most common scenario, same amp model, JCM-800, using the internal cap on each unit, same DI, same riff. So I have here the GP-180 internal amp and cap from the unit, with the track already recorded with that DI. I just want to say that this has no processing, no noise reduction, nothing, just the amp and the cap itself, and just that. Here I can definitely hear a difference. The GP-180 sounds, for me, a little bit more open, more defined. The GP-200 feels a bit darker, more low mids. So at this point it feels like the GP-180 sounds better, but this test isn't really fair, because we're not just hearing the amp, we are hearing different IRs. Let's remove that variable, same amp model, no cap inside the units, same IR applied in the DAW. And the neural amp modeler, I have here an IR, it's a Marshall V30s. Wait, so now they sound basically identical. That's interesting. So maybe the difference we heard before was not the amp. Let's go one step further. The same IR, but now loaded inside both units. So even the IR loader is part of the test. We're gonna choose just an empty slot. I have to select the 3 dots, import file. I'm gonna select from the folder I have saved the Marshall V30 SM57 microphone. It's importing and it's done. Import IR, select, open, and it's loaded. Same result again. Well, at this point, it's really hard to tell them apart. And just to confirm what I'm hearing, I just ran both signals through a spectrum analyzer, Spectral TIFF. You can go and get it, it's free. The blue curve is the GP-180, the orange is the GP-200, and the curves in both tests match almost perfectly. There's no real difference in frequency response, so visually they are basically identical. Here on the second test we have the Marshall amp inside the unit with the neural amp model IR in the DAW. This is enough so we can compare. This is the GP-180 amp and cab IR loader. The V30s are just loaded inside the units. We're gonna start with the GP-180. Let's check with the GP-200 on the source. Now it's becoming clear, the amp modeling itself is the same. The difference we heard in the beginning was just coming from the IRs. Let's just take this further. The same amp capture, I just loaded the same amp head in both units and the neural amp modeler plugin in the DAW as a reference. Same IR for all. So first we're gonna test this with an amp modeler or with the target. Great, so we're gonna now compare with the GP-180. It sounds like it loses a little bit of definition, and we can see that it loses low mids on the bottom, and we're gonna try this with the GP-200. Yeah, I would say this is the same thing as the GP-180, but let's just compare the GP-180 with the GP-200. They behave exactly the same, I would say. Here it is a bit different. Both units just sound close to the plugin, but they don't match it perfectly with the neural amp modeler. That is expected. There are small differences in dynamics and response, but between the GP-180 and the GP-200, they are still very close. Alright, so let's make just a quick reality check. Let's run both units through a real amp. Yeah, here the difference becomes even less noticeable, which is what you expect in a real setup. So after all these tests, what's actually going on? The amp modeling is basically identical, the amp performance is very similar, and the biggest difference comes from the IRs and how the sound is presented. Which one should you get? If you want just something that sounds great straight away, the GP-180 for me just feels more ready out of the box, better IRs and more balanced sound. But if you're using your own IRs or building your tone in a DAW, then honestly, they sound the same. I just want to make a quick shout out to Vincenzo. He helped me refine this testing approach and runs a great Valeton community on Facebook. I'll link it below. It's mainly about the GP-200. Make sure to check that out. If you want just to try this yourself, I'll leave the IR and the amp files in the description. And if you're just using older Valeton units, check out my preset packs as well. See you in the next one. Bye.